Alright, Devlog 2021, the update where I fixed the sound and some final systems. So the first thing I did this month, so I was actually done sooner than I expected. I know, surprise, never happens in software development. I did a gameplay test. I've uploaded that this month, gameplay test 2, where I packaged the entire project into its separate executable and tested it, in which I have, of course, much better performance because I don't have all of this editor overhead, and I basically ran into problems, but I also ran into good things. So the good thing is the game runs great. Yay! It's the reason so long ago, very long ago, last summer, I decided to completely remake the game. Not remake the game, redo many systems and many code from blueprints to C++ because the game was running like shit. If you had like 10 enemies, the game already tanked into like below 60 FPS. It was terrible. The very, very first version of the game, which ran on absolutely terrible systems, ran at like a great 20 FPS when there were like 12, 14 enemies. The game now runs with like 15 enemies on screen, 120 FPS, completely stable, even higher than that. Very good. The game is now completely GPU, at least on my system. At least on my system, the game is completely GPU based in a package project, which means that the performance is pretty much, as long as I don't spawn like insane amounts of physics actors and insane amounts of enemies. I mean, the game will probably go below 120 if I spawn more than 30 enemies, but realistically speaking, I will never ever use more than 30 enemies on screen at once. So yeah, performance is good. I'm very happy with it, and which means also the foundation of the game is good, which means I don't have to make any changes, which means I can just continue on with the things that I want to do. Very good. Second part, juggling animations. Okay, that's one of the last things that I still had to do that were kind of tricky between brackets program-wise, because I basically had no idea how I was going to do it. So juggling is, I should show it. Juggling is where you juggle an enemy into the air. Like that. Yeah. So looks quite simple. It was a pain in the ass to do. Mostly because there are just many different ways to do it. The first way I did it was terrible. What I did was I put the mesh in the physics states, and then I forced a force on it that made the physics state of the enemy be attracted to the capsule, which is the actual actor position. Because if you put a actor in physics state, he will be separated from his movement capsule. Obviously, the movement capsule would have its collision disabled. That was terrible because it basically looked like the enemy was being dragged around. The second thing that I tried was have the physics body actually separate from the capsule, and then after the stun animation is done, have the capsule teleport to the physics actor. That was also terrible because it was super unreliable. Then I went for the third option, which was make the actor go into a physics state, but bind the hip bone, which is the root bone of the mesh, to the capsule so it can't move. This didn't work because if you pin a bone to a location, you can't rotate it, which is really dumb. It's actually a problem with Unreal. So if you have a kinematic bone, which is what pinning a something does, it's not allowed to rotate. It can't move, but because I want something to move but still rotate, because I still want it to tumble, but it doesn't work. So what I eventually had to do in the fourth attempt at juggling animations was basically just it still goes into a physics state, and it's still pinned with its hip bone to the location, but I had to manually make a stun rotator that takes the last stun impulse and the last stun attack location, and then basically rotates the character. So if I find the movement state, that is stun, that's jumping, that's spawning. Where is I can't find my stun state. Oh, pawn is stunned. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And then he just tumbles. Now that's just not the only thing. I've also in the pawn. Actually, I will just show it. Now that's the first part of the solution. The second part of the solution is that it goes into a semi-physics state. So what you can do is you can put things in a semi-physics state where they try and hold their animation. So if I go to enemies, I did some managing with the files. Physics asset. So if I go to stunt and air stun and then do stun and simulate, the AI is trying to hold his animation even though he's in the physics state. So that's part 2 of the physics. So this gets enabled when the stun animation starts, and then after the stun animation is done, he will stop trying to do this and he will just return to his normal state. So yeah, that's tumbling. It looks very simple, but it was very important to get this in the game because it looks hilarious. And it just was kind of weird how it first happened. So that was just an important thing that I still had to do. But that was one of the like final difficult things I had to program. Next thing is the sound system. So there's now full sound for pretty much everything. I even have UI sounds now. So very fancy. So yeah, enemies are no longer completely quiet, and they now properly make use of their sound systems, which is good. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say. I just bought a big audio library. I can now just add audio to everything, and that's just something I'm settled with. The audio system that I made program-wise works very well, except for one weird bug. It's probably the most difficult bug that I have not yet solved. Yeah, let's just talk about it. So, when an entity hits the ground, they are supposed to make a bone break sound. However, it does not work for the player, and I have absolutely no idea why. It is the bug that I just can't fix. It's an unfixable bug. I don't know why it happens. I don't know what causes it. I have checked everything. I've checked the location of the sound. I know the sound is being played, but it doesn't. It's wacky. But it does work for enemies. It works perfectly fine for entities. So if I just quickly grab an entity, I should not have deleted him. And he falls to the ground. He makes a bone break sound. Works for the enemy. I run the exact same code for the player. Doesn't play a bone break sound. I have no idea why, and I can't fix this bug. It's not a critical bug, but it's just wacky and weird, and I don't understand why it's happening. So yeah, further architecture improvements. Yeah, so I said, I think 2 videos ago or 1 video ago that one of the things that I wasn't happy with was the fact that I had too much reliance on the pawn. There was way too much code in one file, and I had to separate in multiple files, which is something I've done. I've separated the code into multiple components instead of relying everything on the pawn file. That's just, I'm not going to go into detail. It takes too long. What I am going to go into is asset loading. My god, that was a pain in the ass. So I wanted to do the gameplay test in 1 day. It ended up becoming free. So it turns out that this method of loading, so static load, you can use a class or you can use an object, doesn't work in a packaged project, but it does work in the editor, which was horrendously confusing to fix. Also, it takes 20 minutes for me to fully package the project into a separate executable, Which means that every time when I thought I had a solution, I had to wait 20 minutes to see if it was actually a solution. So, as it turns out, you can't use static load class to save a reference in a variable and then use that variable later. Because there is a chance that the thing you loaded gets automatically deleted by garbage collection. However, the thing is that only happens rarely. Like about 5 to 2% of the time, a class doesn't load properly. It does load properly, but it immediately gets deleted again by garbage collection. I have no idea how this works, and Googling the problem, I could not Google the problem. I had to figure out by myself that you can't, in runtime, you can't save loaded classes like this in a variable for later usage. Again, it works 2% or 5% of the time, it works properly, and then 2 to 5% of the time, it just doesn't work. I have no idea why, it was an awful bug to try and fix. So the way I do it now is, so I had 2 problems here. It either crashed on loading an attack sound, or it crashed on loading the class. So I've already implemented one part of the fix. I have not yet implemented the fix for the class, but the class is low priority because the class I can at least check if the class is not present. So if I check if the class is not present, the game will just automatically exit its function and it will just not do what it tried to do. However, I actually can't check if the attack sound is missing because it has a valid pointer. It's just pointing to nowhere. So the pointer is valid, it just points to nowhere and the game crashes because it tries to load data that doesn't exist. Which is how crashes happen. Amazing. So what I do now is I basically just save the location of the assets, and then in SK entity attack base, I just load it. So if I load something and use it the same frame, it works 100% of the time. So again, I can't load assets and store references and use them later because there is a chance that that reference is deleted. However, if I use it the same frame, it works. I don't think I'm supposed to do this, and I'm horrendously confused how to properly load assets. And here comes the second part of the problem. Unreal tutorials are useless. Absolutely useless. I think I've said this another time. I think I actually deleted that out. Most Unreal tutorials on the internet, on either YouTube or on or just Word, actually specifically YouTube, are trash. There are so many bad tutorials about Unreal. It's absolutely unreal. So yeah, I pretty much always have to figure, when it comes to difficult stuff like this, I always have to figure stuff out for myself. There probably is a way to safely load things and make sure they don't get deleted by garbage collection, but I don't know. And honestly, this is the only part of the code where this is a problem. So, and it works. It just works. It's just not ideal to save an entire string to a location just to get something. But yeah, whatever. So yeah, it now works. I just also need to implement this string-based fix for the classes, and then everything works fine. Many small improvements. Yeah, this is something I like. So I've said this 100 times now. I'm pretty much done with the foundation. I now just need to focus on adding missing assets. So I've already started on adding some stuff. For example, a lot of environmental detail is currently missing, so I've already started working on that as well. So this is one of the things which I made quickly mazed in like an hour. Just some, and it's just stuff like this, like environmental stuff, which isn't necessarily gameplay related, but it's important to make the game look good. So that's something, that's stuff that I'm gonna work a lot. So basically, pretty much everything that I'm going to do until I'm done with the demo is cosmetic, because practically the game is pretty much 99% done, at least for the demo, in terms of code and levels. I just need to decorate the levels with assets. So that's what I'm going to do for the next 2, maybe 3 months, is making a whole bunch of assets, also updating assets. One of the assets that desperately needs to be updated is the old trooper models. The trooper models are really outdated, and they were made kind of... I've gotten a lot better at modeling in the meantime, so these trooper models really need to be updated to something better. Because they kind of sticks out like sore thumb, like how low quality they are. Also level 3 armor I already updated, but level 2 armor I'm probably also going to update. So let's get something that's... So yeah, level 2 armor is also something that I'm gonna update. These guys also need like belts and stuff, and just more detail, look better. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just many small improvements that I need to make, and then I can hopefully somewhere next year release the demo. But yeah, all of the hard stuff is just done, and I'm very happy with it. So, just continuing on.